Welcome, everybody, to a special post-game edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton, and I am here in one of the radio booths here at MetLife Stadium. And another forgettable, regrettable game for the New York Giants, 2-7. They lose to the Washington Commanders, 27-22, and you've heard of sweet dreams and sweep dreams. The Giants have had moments against the Washington franchise in which they were the big brother and kind of bullied Washington right out of the stadium. Well, guess what? This year, for the first time since 1950, and that's at least 1950, the New York Giants have lost to a rookie quarterback who started against them twice in the season. So 2 losses to Jaden Daniels. And really, the reality is that there are so many ways to look at this game. If you want to pick apart this game, you can address this game for what it is. If you want to look at the big picture, this game just put a magnifying glass as to where the Giants are and where they need to go. So we'll go game first, then big picture. And it's not going to be a long one, guys, I promise, because today there's a lot going on, trying to figure out how this team can get ready and go to Germany and play a game against the Carolina Panthers, who are coming in on a 1-game winning streak. They beat the New Orleans Saints today. So, all right, let's go. This game right now. Look, I've heard this from several people. This wasn't Daniel Jones' fault today. Well, there are plays that are built within a game that are always the quarterback's fault or to their benefit. And there were plays in this game where Daniel Jones, yet again, can't make the play to go above the X's and O's. Fine. Is that why the Giants lost today? Well, in part, it's why they lost. If you had flipped the quarterbacks today and said, does Daniel Jones make the plays that Jaden Daniels did for Washington? I don't believe he does. I think Jaden Daniels has something. You watch him play, and you can see the things that he's doing. He's processing plays. He's making plays. He's under pressure making plays. And Daniel Jones just has not made those plays. But can I honestly say the Giants lost to Washington today because of Daniel Jones? No. You have to look at the other side of the ball. The offense did enough today, whereas if they had dynamic plays across the board, they beat Washington, and they couldn't do that today. The defense, a lot of breakdowns on the back end of the defense from the rookies, and this is really the first time that they showed their age today and lack of experience. And by this point, you would expect them to have the experience. But Tyler Nubin and Drew Phillips, both of whom I think have been very good this year for the Giants, they may have had some hiccups, and both after the game took responsibility for plays. Ultimately, that doesn't fly in the NFL week to week, and they know that. If you're making mistakes week to week to week, the problem is that sooner or later they catch up to you. Neighbors today, Malik Neighbors, not so much involved until the second half because the Giants were just running the ball all over the place. Tyrone Tracy, I thought, had a solid game. Wasn't great, didn't have any breakaway runs. But Nubin and Phillips both had several plays in this game that I would imagine in film review tomorrow, they're not going to be too pleased. But, again, how much do you put on them? The pass rush was non-existent today. Part of the reason Washington just chipped the left side, chipped the right side, and Jaden Daniels got the ball out as quickly as possible. As Brian Burns said, you put 4 hands on Dexter, and then you chip one edge and you chip the other edge. Where's everything else coming from? And the Giants, personnel-wise, it really showed up today. And the reality is that if you can't stop the run, and they've had problems stopping the run at certain points in this season, it's going to come back and bite you. And, did the offense do enough where the defense, if they made a play or two, they could have won this game? Maybe. But overall, when you're 2-6, you're not just going to break down one game and say, this is what happened. This is where they lost, and start analyzing the game as if it determined first place or second place. It didn't. So you've got to take a big picture approach. And unfortunately, I've gotten used to being able to take a big picture approach for the Giants. And as I wrote in a column that posted on NorthJersey.com just a few minutes ago, check that out. There was an image in the locker room where Brian Burns was leaning against the wall, slumped, sitting on the floor at Dexter Lawrence's locker. Dexter Lawrence sitting in the chair facing Brian Burns, and they just were kind of going over the game. And, I'm sure frustration, anger. Afterwards, Dexter said when he was asked about that image, he said, don't worry about that. Whatever I have to talk to my teammates about, I do it. That's his leadership style. That's what he's going to do. And, I tip my cap to it. You want to keep things in-house. You want to talk about it. People are obviously going to observe things in the locker room, and you don't want to talk about it. That's fine. No, it's getting done. Brian Burns essentially said the same thing. They were going over the game plan, trying to figure out, searching for answers as to what went wrong. As a franchise now, the Giants are in really a very challenging spot. You got a vote of confidence from ownership 2 weeks ago for the general manager, Joe Shane, and for Brian Daboll. They were heading in the right direction. John Mara liked what he's seen, still is not happy with where they were at, but it wasn't long ago that they beat Seattle in Seattle. They were 2-3, coming home, and they had an opportunity to try to get back in this. Well, they haven't won since, and they've lost 4 games in a row. Now, you can deal with deficiencies on the roster, and you can deal with coaching decisions that you may or may not agree with. But the longer you put yourself in a position where you're losing games and you're not winning games, you're going to be questioned. The validity of the job performance that you're putting together is going to be questioned. Now, during the year, it works more towards the coaching staff than it does the front office, but the front office is also at its own peril. I mean, you're making decisions based on what's going on in the season. So here's where I'm at. You've got that part of the equation where you want to win games to show that you're heading in the right direction. But then you look at the team that you just lost to today. And you look at the team that was number 3 in the draft that got another quarterback that you would have liked in Drake May. And you couldn't trade up from 6. And you won those games last year and essentially proved that you can do a job. I've said, and I'm on record saying, that Daboll's coaching job last year, with all the circumstances surrounding it, was as impressive as the coaching job in his first year, winning 9 games and a 10th in the playoffs. I said that, and I believe that. But here's the problem. You need a quarterback. I know it. You know it. And those of you who still want to defend Daniel Jones, I can't help you. Because I'm watching quarterback play around the league, and Daniel Jones can't do the things that certain quarterbacks do from a young age to get to that point. He had his opportunity. He hasn't gotten there for whatever reason, whatever you want to blame. You want to blame the offensive line. You want to blame the personnel around him. You want to blame the coaching inconsistency. You want to blame the injuries. Sure, absolutely. All of that is a factor. But ultimately, it comes down to Daniel Jones. 6 years, you look at what Jaden Daniels and how he has infused Washington with what he's done. Look at Drake May, at the way Drake May came back today. They were calling it Magic, not Magic, Magic, up in New England. And you know what? I didn't even look to see if they won that game. I know they were heading into overtime, so I probably should have looked before we went on. So I'm going to look at the scoreboard right now and see if New England won that game. My guess is they lost it, but you just don't know. Yeah, they lost in overtime at Tennessee, so they're 2-7 as well. That's probably one of the saving graces for the Giants, that if New England gets up to number one in Tankathon. Right now, the top 6 spots, Giants are included. All the teams are 2-7. So there's a lot to be determined. But here's the thing. I know there's a faction of fans who believe the only way to get the quarterback is to tank. But if you tank, then your head coach and your general manager and the job they're doing here is now put into question. So you're in NFL limbo. You really are. Because you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, well, we believe in these guys. We think that we want to get a new quarterback for Dable to mold. We like Joe Schoen. He's had hits and misses in the front office. The reality is, how do you get there? How do you get in position to get a quarterback? And now the third and final piece to this. We don't know if any of these quarterbacks that are coming out for next year are going to be the guy, are going to be like Jaden Daniels, are going to be like Drake May, are going to be like Caleb Williams. Do you believe in those guys still? Jaden Daniels might be the best of the 3. So I know, like my producer Paul Wood and his buddies at his tailgate, I know there are a lot of fans out there who want the Giants to make a change at quarterback. I think the change will be coming soon because of the injury guarantee, because of that. And you can't risk Daniel Jones getting hurt and having to be on the hook for that next year, cap-wise and financially. Does Tommy DeVito become that guy? But again, what are you making that decision based on? And as I said, you've got guys like Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns who are playing to win. They are giving everything they have, and they want to win. So it's easy for us to sit back and say, but guys, just think next year you'll get a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, and then you'll win. But the career in the NFL has limits, and guys see opportunities the way they are. And yes, it's a job. You go out, you play a game, you work all week to get into a game situation, you play, and then it's over. And most guys will be able to just go and play. But it's not easy for guys who have higher aspirations. And I truly believe, Lawrence and Burns are 2 of several that believe that they're missing an opportunity this year, that they see talent on this team that for whatever reason is just not coming together. So that's the question moving forward here for the Giants. Do you win games and save your coaching staff and your front office, and then you try to get creative for a quarterback? Or do you lose games and now put the future of your front office and your coaching staff into limbo? And I know there are fans who are already out on Dable, and they're out on Shane and say, you know what, let's bring somebody else in here. I'm just going to remind you, I do not believe that is the situation. I don't believe that the Giants should move past Joe Schoen and Brian Dable. I believe in what they're trying to build. I think the quarterback is the missing piece. I think some things are catching up to them right now. You can't hit them all every year. You can't. And I think Tay Banks and his situation did not help Joe Schoen and doesn't help Brian Dable. You've got a first-round pick from last year who came into year 2 with a lot of potential. And the last couple of weeks and what we've seen from Tay Banks, he's just not competing at the level that they need him to compete at. Period. You give up that slant to Terry McLaurin. They beat you with that slant in Minnesota and in Cleveland. It was Justin Jefferson and Amari Cooper beat you on the same play. You got to compete. You got to be better. You got to be better. And then Daniels hits McLaurin on that second touchdown pass right over Deontay Banks' head. Doesn't make a play on the ball. You got to compete for that ball in the air. If the guy's going to make a catch the way Amari Cooper did in Cleveland, you tip your cap because Banks competed for that ball. This one was if, He got beat on the sluggo. Basically, it was the slant and go. You're giving up that slant. Why are you playing the slant? Let him catch the slant and tackle him and force them to either call timeout or to kick a field goal. You were in a situation where all you wanted to do was give up a field goal in that situation. That was the worst case scenario in that situation when it was 3rd and 18. Then all of a sudden, you give up a 24-yard pass play, and one play later, you give up the touchdown, and it's a huge, huge gut punch to that team. So, I think were there some good signs today? Tyrone Tracy's ascension is still good. I think Devin Singletary came back and showed that he can have a role here. I think Neighbors, you got to continue to find ways to get Neighbors involved. I think Theo Johnson catching a touchdown late, his first career touchdown, doesn't necessarily negate the drops that he had today. But he's a young player. You've got to continue to work with him and try to eliminate that, especially in key situations. But some of that is timing with the quarterback. There are plays here where Daniel Jones is throwing it a tick late. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to have that skill. You have to have that internal clock. Guys like Jaden Daniels has it. They have it. Jones doesn't have it. He doesn't have it right now. And it's not trying to continue to pummel Daniel Jones. It's evident when you're watching these games, that half second, getting the ball out, getting it to guys. Last week, the whole shot to Slayton almost gets him killed because he doesn't anticipate it. Today, there were 2 plays coming across the middle. The one to Theo Johnson, you've got to anticipate that. Get the ball out in front of him. There was a slant to Malik Neighbors in the second half that's an Eli Odell play against the Ravens. Now, it was a little bit further down the line, but you know what I'm talking. You know the one I'm talking about when they beat the Ravens in 2016. When you're throwing that slant can't be up above the guy's head. It can't be. It's got to be in front of him, let him run onto it, and keep running. That half second when he stops to reach up and make that catch, it allows the defender to be right on his back, and you lose that yak, that yards after catch. And this offense is built to take advantage of those kind of plays. And if you can't take advantage of it, your offense is going to be a slog. And that's exactly what they were. I mean, the Giants possessed the ball so much by running the football. Yet in the second half, they were down 14, and it was almost like they were moving the ball, but it was almost like, let's go, guys. 12 minutes left in the game. You don't have enough time to score 2 touchdowns to try to get it. So I understand the 2-point conversion question, and we'll finish with this. Also, I know Paul wanted me to mention, and I think, it's important. Look, Chris Manhertz has played very well at the position for the Giants. He's probably been the best tight end the Giants have had. He catches a touchdown today. Nice catch, back corner of the end zone. Should have had a touchdown against Pittsburgh. That got called back on the Neighbors penalty last week. But I think you've gotten a lot out of Manhertz. So, again, Joe Shane, all the questions in the front office, all the personnel decisions, that signing was a good signing for this team. Now, granted, what does it do? It takes Daniel Bellinger out of an important role for this team. And now you look at, that's a knock against Shane because Bellinger is a 4th-round pick from a couple of years ago. Now he's not doing anything. Well, maybe signing a player like Manhertz for, a minimum contract, maybe the front office deserves credit for that. I mean, we give – sometimes I think we miss I'm trying to think of we place the wrong value on draft picks versus free agency. I think you can make the argument that they're all equal. If you get a signing of a free agent and it's at an economical price and that player takes over for a draft pick, well, you get credit for the free agency, but you get knocked for the draft pick. But I think you need to get credit for the philosophy to say, I'm not going to stick with one versus the other. We're going to play the better player. And I think that's what they're trying to do. I still want to see Bellinger more involved, but if he's not going to get involved, I give Manhart then has to make plays. If Theo Johnson's going to play ahead of Bellinger, he's got to make plays. Theo didn't make plays in the first half, but that was a nice catch that he made on a touchdown. Granted, he was open, so it was a nice play call, nice read by Daniel Jones, and gets the touchdown. So I think where we're at right now, and I forget where we're looking for this team and where they're going forward. My point here is that they got a lot of things going on, and I'm not sure it's all in sync. You want the quarterback, but you need to prove yourselves as an organization. You have veteran players who are still young cornerstones that need to win. You don't want to bail on them and give them the idea that you're not building something. And I think that's the problem that they're dealing with right now. And now they go to Germany and they go play Carolina. And I'm not sure if they're going to be favored in this game. I know they were favored going in before today. It was going to be a 5-point spread, Giants by 5. I'm not sure. I think that shrinks a little bit now. And the last thing, that's what I wanted to talk about before we hang up on the show, is the trade deadline. Talking to Azeez Ojulari, he certainly sounds like a guy who believes he's not going to be here come Tuesday at 4 o'clock. A little complication with Darius Slayton. He is now in the concussion protocol. So even if the Giants wanted to trade him, that's a very complicated situation now. How do you trade someone who's in concussion protocol? Now, obviously, you'd want the medical records, where he's at. So that's one to keep an eye on. But I do believe that they will end up trading Azeez Ojulari, and I think today probably convinced me. I thought they should try to sign Azeez, but at this point, you might want to get an asset for him. Kayvon Thibodeau, I believe, will be back after the bye. He's eligible to come off, but I think they're going to give him this time. Maybe get out on a practice field, see how he can play. He's probably going to have to wear something to protect that wrist. So, you don't want to throw him into this whole mix this week. It's a weird schedule. Giants are here Wednesday and Thursday. Practice is a little later on Thursday. Then they fly overnight to Germany. They'll practice in Germany on Friday and then obviously play in Germany. 9:30 our time here. You'll have the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants. So that wraps up today's show. I appreciate everyone for checking in. Thanks for being all in. Paul Wood, hat tip. Appreciate you always being involved and being out of the tailgate and coming back to produce the show. So thanks as always. And that's where we're at. So I'm going to stay all in. I'm going to be doing everything I can to give you the right coverage and give you the inside take on this team. So keep it right here. Keep it at northjersey.com. Follow me on social media. And I'll be back this week to talk about where the Giants go from here. So final score, 27-22. The Washington Commanders, season sweep of the New York Giants. It's not easy to stomach if you're a Giants fan right now, and I can appreciate that. We're going to see where this goes from here, and I'm going to lay it out and give you everything you need to know. So appreciate you watching, appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you this week.